'Twas the last faculty meeting before winter break, so Skylar made her talk silly for everyone's sake. Before she got started, she wanted to say that she has many projects, but will share just one today. She won't talk about caves and diseases in bats, but she did get a grant to keep studying that. She won't talk about forests and communities nearby, where the health of ecosystems, animals, and people are tied. She won't even talk about snakes, her true love, nor the parasites and diseases and diets thereof. No, what she'll talk about today might be a surprise because it's basic ecology, not very applied. Yes, this is her work on math and disease to get us in the mood for the curriculum committee. 'Twas way back in grad school, as an academic toddler, that I decided to become a mathematical modeler. To be more specific, there's a mathematical way to connect consumers and resources such as predators and prey. Much like a Skylar eating holiday treats, the more prey that there are, the more predators eat. These functional responses were first drawn by Halling, and for grad student Skylar, they sure were enthralling. Because Skylar was researching parasite transmission, and the models for that seemed to have an omission. One contact function was an increasing line. The more hosts that there were, the more contacts they'd find. And one contact function was a line that was flat. Contacts are the same for whatever density you're at. But what about a function between those other two, similar to predators and prey in the Halling type 2? Shouldn't it be that contacts only ascend until host density is high and the line starts to bend? The answer is yes, you can use a type 2 in models for hosts and their parasites too. But how did Schuyler show that this was the case? By counting how many times snails met face to face. In experiment after experiment, contacts saturate. Contact functions are nonlinear, they are not straight. Why does this happen? It's a bit hard to rhyme, but contacts saturate due to handling times. Every host contact has an opportunity cost. A contact made now is a future one lost. Even tiny robots take a moment to touch. It's a short handling time, but it is enough for my undergrad students to do a quick test and discover saturating functions, not what they guessed. Contact functions are important because they foretell whether disease control will go great or not do so well. Calling is used to reduce numbers of hosts, but does it really reduce contacts, as some often boast? And what if humans were to provide piles of resources to wildlife living outside? Providing bird feeders spreads pink eye among birds, and feedlots can spread brucellosis in elk herds. What's happening here is that hosts aggregate to areas where the resources are great. So resources affect host density, makes sense, and host contacts are high when hosts and resources are dense. But there was something left that ate Skylar's brain. Can resource distributions affect contacts when densities are the same? Independent from density, are there a few ways that resource distributions cause host contacts to be raised? First, when resources are scarce, hosts might sit and wait, reducing their movement and encounter rates. Second, contact handling times might be increased when resources are aggregated and hosts eat in peace. And third, the total time that hosts have to contact could be reduced by host foraging, a foraging tax. So, what to our wondering eyes should appear but three mechanisms to test to make everything clear? To consider these mechanisms, we needed a test that held host density constant while varying the rest. In lab microcosms that were covered in tiles, we made resource distributions with 7 unique styles. With 6 periphyton patches and 20 empty spots, we varied resource aggregation from a little to a lot. All the distributions have 8 resource edge patches, such that across all the groups, edge foraging matches. And as aggregation increases from the zeros to the threes, resource patches are just one tile away from the snailies. As aggregation goes up further with more clustered pieces, the distance to resources also then increases. We added some snails and watched them explore, counting who had a few contacts and who had a few more. So a moment of silence for some lost student lives, because snails move roughly as fast as drying paint dries. For 45 minutes, we watched every rep, and that's 2 weeks of my life that I'd like to forget. But that wasn't enough. We had to do more. We built an agent-based model to help us explore what would happen if hosts didn't have foraging behavior, but instead moved around with a more random flavor. The model in NetLogo was designed the same way, where agents on patches above giving up density would stay, though when resources depleted, the agents would choose to move to a new tile on their next random move. And to this optimal foraging rule, we could add increasing stochasticity to the movements snails had. And that's about as much of the methods as I have time to try to explain using rhythm and rhyme. So, this is a graph showing host contact rates. They increase non-linearly, they are not straight. Except as movement behavior gets ever more random, the contact functions become more linear and tandem. Once again, we see that real animals do the hauling type 2, whereas random movement models do something else, boo. But back to our questions about resource distributions, because our parameter estimates revealed some solutions. The more aggregated and distanced that resources got, the more host encounters the distribution wrought. Oh, I can't see my screen. Sorry, guys. This happened both for snails and agents with non-random movement, and figuring out why took some additional proving. What we found is that when resources were near, hosts didn't move around much and encounter their peers. But as distances increase, they move more and stay less, encountering other hungry hosts in distress. So sure, aggregation can bring hosts to the same place, but it can also make them wander around empty space. Similarly, we also did find that patterns and handling times were well aligned. The more aggregated and distance that resources got, the shorter the handling times that distributions wrought. Since resources change contacts, it is no surprise that they also change how epidemics spread and arise. Here we can see that if pathogens are not depends on the resource distribution we've got. In fact, in these simulations, we only see epidemics occur with resource aggregation and high host density. And as a reminder, lest you should forget, the more random the movement, the more epidemics we get. So yes, even when host density was fixed, resource distributions affected how hosts and parasites mixed. This was true for snails and simulated hosts. Am I almost done rhyming? Yes, phew, almost. The snail experiment started during my PhD, and as I moved on in the world, it all came with me. I came to NC State in the year 2020 with a lot of work left, modeling aplenty. So thanks to the AUC minor students who analyzed zillions of videos that we had accrued. And then there was Zach, our amazing postdoc, who spent 2 years running models nonstop. He was still running them 24 hours per day up until this week, when I'm happy to say that we submitted revisions to ecology letters, a Christmas miracle. There is nothing better. So this year, whenever my heart feels too small, I can think about snails and won't be sad at all. Thank you for listening. One thing left to say. Wishing you all paper acceptances and happy holidays. And please take one sticker to promote my new book. I'll pass them around so you can take a look.